Good morning and welcome to the latest edition of the Esri National Security Webinar Series. Today's topic is titled Indoors and Outside, Securing Critical Facilities and Workplaces. My name is Carl Walter and I'm the Industry Manager for National and Homeland Security here at Esri, and I will be facilitating today's webinar. We have 5 speakers today as part of our agenda, and we will most likely take the entire 60 minutes we have scheduled. That should include time for a few minutes of questions, which you can submit through your webinar online tool. If we don't get to your question, we'll respond directly through the email address you provided when you registered. If you're interested in more specific information on how to deploy Arcgis in a facility security environment, there will be an option on the survey tool at the end of the webinar where you can specifically request to be contacted. Our webinar today is being recorded, and the link to that recording will be sent out in a follow-up email. If you could not stay online for the whole time, or if you want to share the recording with other colleagues, you can do so. Here is today's team of presenters. We're going to start off with John Petter, and John will discuss using drone to map to establish near real-time base file imagery of a campus or an area of responsibility, and how to use change detection techniques to identify things that have changed on your campus at your facility over 2 time periods. Following John will be Phil Melke. Phil will discuss operational planning, resource allocation around your campus, shared awareness of crime threat data in and around your environment, both historical and real time. Closing it out with workflows on insider threats. We'll do some analysis of physical security, information management systems, card reader, and door swipe data. Bo Rick will go next, and Bo will talk about security workflows from inside a campus building, from inside a facility, including reporting suspicious activity from a mobile device. Madeline Shorin will talk about basics around 3D technology and 3D data, and then go into some perimeter security workflows that involve line of sight, view shed analysis, and where to position CCTV based on a viewable landscape. And our last presenter is Guy Konecko. Guy is the GM, Joint Operations Command and Funer Centers practice from our business partner, Geocom. Geocom recently deployed their smart venue solution during a national security special event, a pro sporting event, this past February, and Guy is going to tell the story behind that deployment. A large stadium will be our critical facility in that example. We're going to go from a series of apps that are completely configurable, think hours, days, weeks from a configuration standpoint, all the way to a large scale custom deployment where think weeks, months for your deployment timeframe. What do we mean when we say critical facility or critical infrastructure or workplaces? So I want us to think pretty broadly, pretty horizontal. And if you look at some of these examples, sports venues, stadiums, embassies, utility companies, utility grids, shopping malls, high schools, military bases, they really all have similarities in that they could be viewed as a small self-contained city. Many of them have government or private security in play to help secure the area of responsibility. Many have their own incident management systems, records management systems for incident collection and analysis. Private CCTV is in play in the vast majority of cases. And some of these entities even utilize physical security information management solutions, PSIMs. Some of these facilities have GIS software also in play. All of these entities share one thing in common. They're legitimate targets. And if you base on recent history, I think that confirms that, especially with high schools here in the US. Many of these targets can be considered soft targets also. Our first presenter is John Petter, and John is going to start things off literally at what I would say stage 1, how to acquire near real-time imagery of your area of responsibility, your campus, your facility, And I'll also show a few interesting examples of change detection between imagery, over, and AOR during 2 different time periods. So let's transfer over to John's screen, please. And John, if you can just start off with, tell us a little bit about what is Drone2Map, and then how can we use it to protect our facility or our campus.
Great, thank you, Carl. So Drone2Map is a way of ingesting images taken with a UAV and then to create information products out of those. Some of those products are orthomosaics and digital surface models. I'll just give you a quick overview of the product itself. So what does it do? So you really need to be able to collect imagery of campus, or as Carl just mentioned, maybe a school or any other critical infrastructure. The advantage of a drone flight is it's very quick, easy and repeatable, and very inexpensive. So the basic workflow is you fly your drone, you run the Drone2Map app on your computer, and then you get the results, and the results are written to disk, and then you can also publish those results and into your WebGIS and share those results. It doesn't require any other software. It's sort of standalone, and it just publishes out either to Arcgis Online or Portal. A couple of basic flight patterns for capturing data. On the left here, you'll see it's just an area survey, and that's used for capturing sort of base maps and any 2D products. Then you can also do orbital flights, and those are used to create 3D products, 3D meshes. So any sort of area of interest you can now model in 3D pretty quickly. Some of the products that are created from Drone2Map, as I mentioned, is an orthomosaic, digital surface models, point clouds, and you can even do inspections all within the product. Once you've actually created the product, then you quickly share it right out into hosted tile layers on your portal or Arcgis Online, so it's consumable by everyone in your organization or shareable between organizations. And we can do 2D and 3D products. Once you've got those created, then that is available throughout the entire Esri product line and platform, whether you're going to use that in Image Server or ArcGIS Pro or even ArcGIS Earth, and I'll show you some of those momentarily. So planning your flight, this is one of the most important parts of the imagery, is to collect good overlapped imagery. So this is our Esri campus, and I flew this Sunday morning. And this is a product here called SiteScan by 3D Robotics, one of our Esri's partners, and it makes for a very good flight planning and flight control software. So before I fly, I can make all the settings and adjustments, understand the resolution, the estimated flight time, and the number of images that's going to be collected. As you can see here, it's 0.7 inch per pixel, which is pretty incredible. So this is Drone2Map, the product. And there's some basic templates set up. There's a rapid template, which is used for in the field and in field to make sure that you've captured your area of interest. 2D mapping, which is what I'm going to show you right now. We have 3D mapping and an inspection mode, and each has a sort of derivative products created from it. So the other day I flew, and this is the flight path, and these are the images. We can click on any of these images right here, and you can see the incredible and beautiful detail. These, I think, are jacaranda trees right in here from our campus. But you can zoom in and see the leaves on the trees, so it's an incredible detail. This whole flight only took 19 minutes. So it's very quick and very repeatable to do. The products that came from this flight, number one is the orthomosaic. So this Drone2Map took all of those images, and there was 500 images, and mosaic them all together into this beautiful base map. I now have an accurate, almost real-time representation of the Esri campus, and this was flown Sunday. If you think about the base maps that you normally use online, they could be months or even years old, and this is just days old and could be easily flown maybe once a quarter or whenever you needed to, and used as a base map. So sort of one set of product is to do that, but then we can actually look at a digital terrain model. So this is elevation throughout the campus, and there's also a digital surface model. So now I can look at the entire campus in elevation detail. And all these are now shareable right through to ArcGIS Online or even into Pro. You can see on my toolbar here, I have a open in Pro, and that will actually take all the products created with this and open it right in Pro, and I'll show you that in a minute. So I did share this, and I went to the Tools menu, and I just created a tile layer. And now this is shared in a web browser, so I can use anywhere in my organization or share that. And I've got the flights path mapped, which I can turn off. But again, I've got this beautiful ortho mosaic, which is now easily used as a base map. So if I have an event or anything happening, I can just fly that, and you can use this base map now to plot anything that I need. If you've got critical infrastructure that you need to document, this is a very easy and quick way to do it. With a 19-minute drone flight, about an hour of processing time on my laptop, I've now got these beautiful near real-time base maps. We'll go back to Drone to Map, and I'll show you a second project that I have. So the other morning on the Esri campus, we flew one of the parking lots at the back. And the idea here was we'll do a flight in the morning and we'll do another flight in the afternoon. And now can I easily tell what has changed? So take that into any other sort of infrastructure, then you can quickly and easily fly and understand change, whether it's the same day, different days, change over weeks, change over month, or change over years. So from this flight, you can see I've got the cars. I can look and actually see the elevation of each vehicle. So I have two of these with elevation. I can now take these and open these up into ArcGIS Pro and use some of the raster analytic functionality to take a look at the difference in elevation, because the parking lot will be flat and all the cars have elevation associated with them. So I opened this in ArcGIS Pro, and again, you can see this is my morning flight and my afternoon flight. They're not perfectly aligned, but they're pretty close, and this was just a relaunch, refly. I can look at the digital surface models in elevation in here, and running a minus, I minus the morning from the afternoon, and that now gives me change that has occurred in the parking lot. So I can go to appearance and use my swipe tool, and I can now see what spaces have changed and what have stayed the same. So you can apply this methodology to any topic that you want to see quickly and easily the change detection. This was not a hard process to do. It just required flying the drone, capturing the imagery, sharing it with Pro, and running just a simple minus operation, and then using the symbology to tell what has changed. I can then take that and again push that right out into my WebGIS. So this is Web App Builder, and I'm using the swipe tool in Web App Builder to again understand what has changed in this parking lot from morning to afternoon. And I've got all my different layers published here, so I can still see the original digital surface from the morning to the afternoon and understand what that change is and where it's occurred in the parking lot. So the real takeaway here is that if you have a school campus or any other facility which you need to map, you can use this as a base map to understand where all the rooms are. So if people are making entry to that area, you can guide them by mapping it with almost real-time imagery. You can easily collect it, refly it, process it, and share it very quickly and easy, all using Drone to Map and a simple UAS. So the drone that I flew to capture this was a DJI Phantom 4. So it's not an advanced machine, it's something you can buy for under $2,000. Get it up in the air, capture that imagery, and then process it and share it. With that, Carl, it's back to you.
Yeah, great points, John. So keep in mind again, the entire process, 20 minutes of flight and maybe an hour or two of processing, you have near real-time imagery for your facility or your area of responsibility, and that can be done routinely throughout a day, throughout a series of days. If you're planning for an event, if your facility is going to host some sort of planned special event where new structures and tents and stands are going to be put up, things that you know about. And then on the analysis side, John showed you some change detection so you can actually understand where things are different between two different time periods and comparing two different images. We're now going to transition to Phil Melke, and Phil is going to talk about a day in the life in a security posture. Again, operational plans, tactical resource allocation, shared awareness, and he's going to use a couple different historic and real-time trends to show this information. And Phil, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thanks very much, Carl. Maintaining clear and consistent communications is a part of any security program lifecycle. A common operating picture like this helps us to be able to develop a plan for the process of understanding how we're going to manage an event or standard blue sky operations. What we're seeing here is an Air Force base. We're trying to plan security and hazard mitigation for an air show that we've got coming up. And so with this, we have a variety of different perspectives that we're introducing into the mix and into the plan, and with that there's purpose-driven applications that are intended to support each of the stakeholders that are involved so that each perspective ultimately can develop a collective integrated planning map. What we're seeing here first is from the perspective of fire and emergency management personnel and some of the assets and the resources that they're immediately concerned about for being able to maintain and mitigate the issue towards risks of life and other the dangers that hazardous materials can pose. And associated with that, through another purpose-driven application, security planning details now have the opportunity to be able to plan where they're going to be placing our assets given the rest of the context of this event. And this specific application provides a easy-to-use template for laying out information for what we're planning to incorporate with our asset management and the locations of our resources. Now, collectively building from a fire and security planning detail, now we have a collective integrated planning map in order to be able to understand collectively what our view is around this event or standard blue sky operations. And each one of these applications are intended to really collectively feed into this common source so that we can manage this incident with a series of tools and analysis procedures that can help us to understand and to mitigate and even work through drills for what the potential is given some of the hazardous materials that we may have on site or some what-if scenarios given the potential for breach in certain areas. This is a specific tool here that we're seeing, the Emergency Response Guide tool, that enables us to, based off of the hazardous materials that we have, to understand how we're going to mitigate the potential for a breach of those hazardous materials, in this case, an explosion of compressed gas. So given the chemical type and the spill size, the wind direction, and the time of day, we're able to understand the directional flow for what we're expecting this plume of hazardous materials to look like here. So now we can see this and we can understand what kind of impact it's going to have on our plan and mitigate that with the appropriate types of assets and resources. Now, having a common picture here, we can maintain our tactical operations planning and work through and understand this constant stream of incidents that are occurring as if this is either a blue sky operation or a larger scale event. This gives us the opportunity to be able to collectively plan for locating assets, putting resources in the right place, and respond to incidents accordingly. ArcGIS is a platform that promotes mapping and location-based analysis so that your staff can gain and share insights about your operating environment. And with these insights, you can best understand how to save lives and property. This is an example of an integration with one of our partners, NC4. And NC4 maintains a threat feed that can be used to understand risks to facilities or risk to personnels. And this is maintained 24/7. It's a live feed of incidents that are happening. And utilizing a location platform with this threat feed, we can actually understand in greater detail where some of these events are occurring in proximity to our own facilities and help to summarize a complete threat level for these threats that are occurring within 50 miles over the last 12 hours. This gives a chance for agencies that maintain a worldwide presence to keep an eye on what's happening around their facilities and properly ensure that their stakeholders and all of their employees are accounted for and communicated the right kind of way around around some of these incidents. Having a collective view of this threat feed gives us a deeper impression of how we can plan for and communicate with each one of these satellite offices. And in the long run, we can actually start to analyze some of these tools in order to be able to potentially understand the seasonal trend of some of these incidents. This is an example here that is a combination of the NC4 threat feed and our living atlas data that comes from Weather Service, NOAA, and a variety of other places, so that we can plan for our facilities, understand and mitigate threats to our potential supply chain in some cases, and really maintain a complete and total situational awareness for all of the incidents that may be affecting all of our satellite offices. It's a good way to maintain a collective profile on all of our facilities. The same way here, once we've collected this threat feed, we can actually understand the seasonality and mitigate some of these threats, potentially predict the volume of threats in some areas, as we're also doing some site selection and understanding where it is that we're going to be placing our resources in support of these facilities, which areas are higher or lower threat, and ultimately analyze some of these trends over time so that we can justify some budget expenditures as well. Now we're going to be looking at that NC4 threat feed through an application called Insights. Insights is an easy way to be able to slice and dice some information that we're receiving, in this case that threat feed, to be able to understand some of our incident types over time, as well as the day of the week and the time of day in which we're seeing these occur in greater volumes. This is useful information for the planning of staffing and resources for each one of the facilities that we're supporting a security operations plan for, and we can ensure that we've got the right kinds of assets and resources in place given this threat feed and our understanding of that threat feed. Now, this application, Insights, is an easy-to-use application that we can start from a data source and start to break that apart and understand all of the pieces and parts, some trends that are occurring, and with these trends, help to answer some questions about how we're going to be mitigating threats in the area, threats to life and threats to property. I'm going to show you a closer example here. Let's talk about perimeter security. So what we're seeing here is a map of the perimeter of our campus, and this gives us a chance to understand not only the location of the campus and all the buildings that are involved with it, but now we're going to utilize data from the local law enforcement's open data portal. Law enforcement's been using our technology pretty regularly in order to analyze crime and understand incidents. Now we're able to use that incident feed from their CAD and record system and symbolize it in a way that helps us to understand densities of the incidents that are occurring around our campus. And we can use this to help us to mitigate some of these threats by understanding what these threats actually look like. Now, by approaching this by our incident type, now we're going to get a perspective on the volume of incidents that are occurring, and it can be symbolized in a chart in a variety of different ways. Now I can see traffic incidents and where the density of traffic incidents, other vehicle crimes are occurring, and also potentially understand where warrants are being served, where vandalism events are occurring. And this collectively gives me an idea. This area specifically is an area that's outside of the Esri campus, in an area that we're going to be mitigating a little bit later using some of our 3D technology. Now, given this view in this particular area here, there's a gas station that tends to have some alcohol incidents that are occurring pretty frequently. As you can see, these tools are easy to use to be able to first start to understand some of the spatial trends, but now we're going to understand the temporal trends that are associated with these incidents. This is a timeline that helps to give us an impression of the rising spikes and declines of crimes as they're occurring over time, and it's really easy to just grab that date field from that open data incident feed that's coming through and start to use that as well as some of our other kind of time charting applications as well too. We're going to choose day of the week and the hour and build a quick heat chart in order to be able to understand, well, really what are the densities of these incidents that are occurring based off of the day of the week and the time of the day. And just like we were looking at that NC4 threat feed, this will help us to plan our assets and our resources accordingly. Now, not only is it important to understand the threat to the perimeter, but we also need to understand in greater detail where we might be finding some insider threats. In order to do that, we're going to use insights to analyze the relationship between a variety of different data sources. So what I want to see here at this point is the relationship between our entry logs, our badge scans that happen at our individual gates and entry points, and understand that relationship with the geographies, the buildings that are being served here, in order to be able to maintain facility security and to make sense of that volume of data that's being collected on a regular basis. So what we have here are points of entry. It's actually all of our asset types that we have within our facilities feature set, and these are it for safety's sake as well too. And this includes AEDs, fire extinguisher, first aids, and gates. And really all I'm interested in is the exits and the entry points in order to be able to join that information to our entry log statistics. So what does an entry log look like? Well, let me show you real quick. It's some really simple information. It's the employee number, the entrance and exit that's being scanned at, as well as a timestamp. And there are also occasions here in our database where we're going to find denial of entry as well too. And so that's marked here as a DOE. And so whenever we make a regular scan in our process of being able to enter a door, or you maybe that employees are entering dozens of doors throughout the course of the day, and that's should be all normal, well and good, but what we want to be able to understand is some of the outliers, the times that are happening that may be a little bit suspicious, and also understand some of those that are receiving a high rate of denial of entry. So the first thing that we're going to do is to create a relationship between our points of entry and that log data. And we're going to do that via the name field on our facility data and then the entry point on that log data. And this is going to create a relationship, which is essentially going to be a new data set for us to work with within Insights. So one of the first things that I want to show is a map that now is utilizing this relationship layer in order to show the volume of information that we're seeing here in terms of our entry statistics. And the way that we're going to make that visible here is to choose within our options how we're going to be styling this information and what field we're ultimately using in order to make sense of this. And we're going to do that scrolling down to the count of the entry log statistics here. And what we're going to see first is this view where we can understand each one of the gates, the number of times that these gates have been, or these entry points have been made, and we can also start to understand some, immediate trends with this data as well too. This building is receiving a lot more entry points. It's a central one on campus, and it's also a larger volume of people that are there. So it makes total sense. And we can change this, the view of the statistics, the size of our outliers, and really how all of this information is symbolized. But I think, the default here works really pretty well. So that's a start. That's our initial set in order to visualize some of the data. Let's just resize our window here. And now the next thing that I want to do is to actually start to understand our relationships in our logs to the buildings themselves. So I'm seeing here hour, and also the other piece of information that I want to bring in is building. And I'm going to make a chart out of that, and we're going to call that actually a heat chart here. So I can see, the buildings along the top and the times here. Just for simplicity's sake, I'm going to flip the fields so that I can see. This is something that makes it's a little bit more intuitive for me to be able to see our time period is going from left to right in our buildings from top to bottom here. And again, just that same sort of validation on building M. It's receiving a lot of entry points, and that makes sense really based off of the data that we have and our understanding of the facility as well too. So now you can go through and start to highlight the different places that were entered at different times of the day. And you can also visually see this via a heat chart. So the darker purple is showing a higher number of entries to the building, and then you start to see that tail off towards the end of the day as well too. And we've got a couple of late night workers. Okay, all right, so now what I want to do is take this to the next step, and we're going to use link analysis now supported in Insights. Link analysis is a data analysis technique used in network theory that's used to evaluate the relationships or the connections between network nodes. And these relationships can be between various types of objects or nodes, including people, organizations, or transactions with buildings like entry log statistics. And link analysis has three primary purposes: to find matches for known patterns of interests, or to find anomalies by detecting violated known patterns, or to find new patterns of interest like social networking or marketing and business intelligence analysis. So these blue dots are our buildings. And every time you click on a building, you can understand and see the employees that had entered it. And all of these employees are sized by the number of times that they show up in the entry log statistics. So we have some employees that only enter building O, like 1620. But we may end up finding that we've got some other employees that actually make their way around quite a bit to a variety of the buildings, and we can now see the interrelationships between this employee, the buildings that they visited, and the time of day that those buildings were visited as well, and we can also see that visually. So this is starting to get really pretty interesting, because we can start to then filter our employees by, well, let's just take a look at the ones that show up the most within our entry log statistics here. So I'm just going to highlight the top. We'll take a look at the top few here. And this is just filtering that data so that we can understand that we've got a few employees that were really, well, they're getting around, and this could be completely normal for the course of an employee's activity throughout the day, but there may be some things that start to show up and make us a little bit more concerned about their interrelationship to the buildings that they're facing. So let's take this another step here. Let's get into a little bit more detail about those denial of entry points. So I'm going to take off our filter that we have here based off of our employee ID, and I'm going to change this approach for what we're looking at into those points in which we have a denial of entry. And what I mean by that is that these are the points in which we have employees that were not able to scan into the buildings. And what we see here is that we have Q has a couple of individuals that were denied entry that at a couple of different gates here, and we can see actually the gates in which those denials occurred. and understand, more when they occurred, and try to look for some anomalies and some concerning patterns then as well too. But the other end here too, we have an employee that had frequented a variety of buildings and received multiple denials of entry. And this one concerns us specifically because Building D is a high security access facility, and there were 2 attempts for entry at 7 and 9. So this would mean, employee 986 is going to have a little conversation with our security team. And we've been able to understand that by utilizing our view of this data in a way that's meaningful and actionable through quick analyses as well. Using these quick analysis methods, you start to establish what becomes a standard operating procedure. And that becomes an analysis tradecraft now that you'll want to reproduce as the picture of our entry logs changes daily, or some of our perimeter analysis data that's coming from the police department will be updated on a regular basis as well. And we can utilize that attachment to that open data platform in order to be able to understand some of these changing threats over time. One of the great things about Insights is that once you've done your quick analysis and you've determined a useful and actionable information product like this one here, well, now you can reproduce that using a model and this analysis view. This helps to express the activity that's been completed in order to be able to create these information products, as well as examples of those information products on the other side of this, so that when you have a new data set log that you want to, or a log data set that you want to introduce to this, it's just a matter of updating this data and choosing how it is that you're replacing those fields. So as this entry log information changes on a regular basis, or some of the open data that we were utilizing from the local police department before, you can stay up to date using your existing analysis standard operating procedure and make that a part of your regular process.
Okay, as we're transferring over to Bo, so what you just saw there with Phil was a couple examples of perimeter security at an airport. So again, another type of key facility. Insider threat information, as well as some global threat feeds that you can monitor for suspicious activity occurring around your facilities or in close proximity to your facilities. We're now going to move from the outside, which is what we just did with John and with Phil, and we're actually going to go and apply GIS principles inside facilities. And we're going to take this over to Bo, who is one of our leads on our indoor GIS capabilities.
Awesome, thanks, Carl. And so, yeah, we've seen a lot of great ways that our software is helping us use GIS and location information to maintain these safe, secure campuses, venues, facilities. And I want to focus on how we're using our new product, Arcgis Indoors, to record and share campus-level location information. Whether we're using the tools to find critical safety equipment or egress routes, navigating our way through unfamiliar spaces, submitting 311 suspicious activity reports, or accounting for people in the event of an emergency, all these things can be done with real-time location applications on the web and natively on mobile devices with Arcgis Indoors. And that's really important because we spend about 85 to 90% of our time indoors. So the ability to find and share and understand indoor location information is critically important, not only to those who frequent these spaces, but also to those responsible for keeping us safe. Because we as humans, spend that amount of time inside. So first thing I want to show is our native iOS mobile application for iOS and Android, actually. Here we can see me in real time on the second floor of our building, pulling up the nearest exit. Notice that the exit is also denoted as a badged entry. And I can also pull up information about nearest safety equipment like first aid kits, fire extinguishers, AEDs, as well as the nearest point of access to the facility, such as a gate, a pedestrian gate. Then I am going to go and pull up information from my calendar and use the system's navigation capabilities to take me to one of my meetings. So here you'll see me pull up my calendar. You can see different meetings throughout the course of my days. I will then use the navigation to move to that meeting. But if you're a security team, you can imagine that these calendar events could also be tasks that you need to close out throughout the course of an afternoon. And you see that our application is making use of indoor location. You can see that you can switch between floors to gain a better understanding of just what is around you, whether it's above you, below you. And then we are using Wi-Fi access points to triangulate my location in our building, and then reflect that in my movements to the meeting room that I'm going to. This could also be delivered to a team tracking the location of a security team in a facility. If they're going into a scenario where we need real-time information on where that team is, we have an ability to provide that information. So you see, as I make my way into the room, I notice that there's something a little suspicious. The fire door is actually jammed. And ultimately, that's a threat to my security as well as anyone who actually uses it. So I can see information about the room that I'm in. I can zoom to that room. I can share it as a point of interest to people on my team. I can also favorite that room as a place that I navigate to frequently. I can also submit a 311 suspicious activity report. So here you'll see me pull up our 311 application, where it automatically detects the time and day, as well as the location within the facility, and then provides me with the ability to submit a security report and issue that item through an OmniClass feature as a jammed fire door. So I'll pull up a fire door feature here, and then you just note in the comments that the fire door is jammed, and then you'll also see that I can submit a photo of that jammed fire door to the team. And that's really important because the team has a little bit of an idea of what's going on before they even get there. So you're saving, not only giving a team tools to make this easier, but also saving them time and trips back and forth. And next, what I want to show is a demonstration of our mustering application. So we built this to quickly account for everyone in the event of an emergency. And so you can see that we kind of have 2 wings here and 3 floors for each wing, giving us about 6 sectors within which we need to account for the whereabouts of 5 people. You can see as they move through the different sectors, their location is updated. And so they're accounted for in all of the different sectors that they visited. And the last sector that they visit is going to be important because when an event happens, you're going to want to know where these people are, where these people were last, and where they're supposed to be based on that. So, for example, we have folks starting to muster now in this application. You can see that some people aren't mustered, and those are the people that we're really concerned about. Where are they? You can see who is not mustered, what sector they're on, what floor they're on, and then quickly pull up information on where they're at. So we can see that Dan is not mustered. He is in one of our office manager spaces on the 3rd floor. We can pull up information about what's around them, providing good context to people that need to go in and help him escape. And then we can also see that there was another anomaly here. We had someone who was supposed to muster in Station 6, but actually, or Station 5, but actually ended up mustering in Station 6. And typically this would require a lot of back and forth over the radio in order for people to kind of differentiate where people are supposed to be with where they actually are. You can do this very quickly through this sort of application. And finally, I just want to drop into one of our 3D applications as well. Here we can see a lot of the same functionalities in 3D. And so the first thing I'm going to do is just kind of show you how you have the ability to kind of explore the space as well as find out where people are just by examining this location on the map, as well as searching for people and places. So if I am looking for my friend Moira, we can see that there are a number of people in the M3 Northeast sector, but I'm specifically looking for Moira. And I want to know the fastest route to her location. So I'm going to pull up her location, and then I'm also going to search for my own location. And I can see here that, we have Douglas Sakai, and that's where I am located. So we'll pull up a route that will show us, the quickest time and the distance, and also give us the ability to account for any kind of accessibility issues, where we can select an elevator option, and it'll provide us actual elevator options. So this is a true 3D network that allows us to navigate 3D spaces. Another important factor to consider is room occupancy. So we'll show here that in real time we can update the vacancy of spaces. So here we can see, for the south wing of building M is relatively empty. And this will be pretty critical information to provide to folks in the event of an emergency. So that sort of concludes my section here. If you're interested to learn more about our indoor location capabilities or our new product, ArcGIS Indoors, please reach out to me at the email on the screen here. It's bryck@esri.com. And thank you all for joining us today. Back to you, Carl.
All right, Bo, great, thank you. That statistic, 90% of our time spent indoors, just absolutely reinforces the need for us being able to bring GIS into a campus, into a build, and inside a building environment. And those examples, a lot of that occurs during a lot of the use cases Bo showed can be taken just from basic facilities management types of scenarios that we're using in a security environment. This is the type of information your internal security people should have access to, as well as in the event of an emergency, the ability to share that with responding security personnel, first responders and whatnot. And that is, again, all easy to do thanks to mobile applications and web GIS. We're now going to transition over to Madeline, and she is going to talk about 3D in a campus environment, in a campus facility security environment. And she'll start off talking a little bit about what is 3D, what is 3D data, and then go into some various line of sight, view shed analytics during her explanation. Madeline, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thanks, Carl. Yeah, so Bo kind of gave a little intro to 3D, but I want to take a slightly deeper dive and just give a quick overview of the technology itself. So in recent years, Esri has introduced 3D across the ArcGIS platform, and it's been introduced the same way that 2D has been introduced. So it's a 3D GIS that can be used to collect and manage data in 3D. So whether you're using point clouds, 3D meshes, or 3D feature classes, all of these different types of 3D data can be used and reused across different clients. And in doing that, we can also create tailored experiences for different types of users. So some folks are only going to use 3D in the web browser, some people are going to use it in desktop, or maybe a hybrid approach. But this really allows you to customize your GIS interactions and utilize the full capability of 3D on the ArcGIS platform. And how we see this type of capability being applied is first in the managing of the data itself. So being able to show the representation of indicators that may impact event plans or threat landscapes is a critical component of the event planning process. Some indicators might be where all of the event assets are, like staging, booths, security hotspots, and being able to manage all of that information within a 3D context. Once you have your data enabled in 3D, you can utilize it in several different ways. The first is for pre-event planning. So you're able to virtually represent areas of interest in 3D, and that allows you to account for threats that aren't apparent with traditional 2D maps. You can then apply your findings to develop more holistic plans that help you improve event safety. The second use case we see is being able to gain a clear understanding of threats and the most efficient way to respond in tactical operations. With a 3D GIS, you can run a line of sight and viewshed analysis for areas in or around an event space. And that helps you identify vantage points that could easily be exploited. And lastly, we see viewshed analysis being used to determine the best placements for observation points, allowing you to maximize your capability to detect and address potential threats before they cause harm. So these are just a few ways that we see 3D GIS being used to support tactical operations, and we'll dive into the viewshed and line of sight analysis in just a few minutes. So you may be wondering, how do we get started? So available with the latest release of Arcgis Pro are the 3D Exploratory Analysis tools. And these are a suite of interactive 3D analytical tools that can be used to quickly explore and understand your 3D content. The first tool in this new feature is line of sight. The line of sight tools allow you to understand the direct communication of sight lines between buildings or other objects. So you can have one observer to one target or one observer to many targets. You can also simulate camera positions within an area of interest. The second tool is called View Dome. This tool gives you a 360-degree visibility from a single spot. It can work with multiple points to show where visibility coverage overlaps. And lastly, the viewshed creation tool shows visibility from a camera-like observer to a specified target. This allows you to identify visible and non-visible objects in a specified extent. So what's the data component to all of this? Really, the first step to utilizing the line of sight tools is to build out your area of interest in 3D. There are several ways you can get to a 3D model and several types of 3D models. Today, we're going to just focus really quickly on untextured and textured models like you see here. So to get to a low level of detail building model, like the one you see here, you often start with a 2D building footprint. And then you can utilize LiDAR data or elevation data to append height attributes along with roof form information to the 2D building footprint, and then extract it to a 3D form based on the newly appended attributes. And that's going to get you to an untextured building with roof form information. There are plenty of other ways that you can, build out your 3D area of interest. And if you have any questions about that later on, definitely feel free to reach out. Okay, so enough of the slides. Let's move on to the actual demo. So here we are in Arcgis Pro, where I have a 3D scene of the Esri campus in Redlands. And very simply, you can just click on the Analysis tab and open the 3D Exploratory Analysis tools. And to start, I'm going to pick line of sight. On the side pane, the parameters of the tool pop up. I can play around with these parameters and change them to whatever I want, or I can just start using the tool. And with just 2 clicks, one to represent my observer point, one to represent my target, I've got my line of sight built. The green represents what is in the line of sight and can be seen from the observer. The red is what's being blocked, so cannot, the observer can't see past a certain, maybe here it's a tree or another object that is obstructing the line of sight. So we can actually activate the line of sight and get some control points. So I can interactively move the target. You'll see that there's a little orange line underneath the point showing where it is in XY. So I can move it up or down, so maybe from the 3rd floor to the 2nd floor, and really just full interactive capabilities here. And it's selected, so I can just click delete to remove the analysis and get started with another one right away. So that's just a really quick overview of line of sight. But let's do something that's a little bit more like a real workflow. So I have a section of a route that I've added into the scene, and I'm interested in placing a spotter that can keep an eye on the route as something progresses down the road, maybe like a parade or just a car. So we'll go back into the tool, and instead of using the interactive placement creation method, I'm going to override that with the targets along a line creation method. This little blue text here will tell me exactly what I need to do to complete the tool and complete the analysis. So the first thing it's asking you to do is to click in the scene to create an observer. So I'm going to click on top of this building here, which is building Q, one of the main buildings on campus. The second thing that it's telling me to do is select a line in the view. So I can do that by actually selecting in the scene, or I can use the drop down to select the line layer here. So it's just going to be route. And I'm happy with that, so I click apply, and the line of sight with multiple observer points or multiple target points is created for me. So you can see here that this is actually pretty comprehensive. It gives you a pretty good overview of the, I guess, this point right here can see pretty much all of the line. There's a little bit of red going on, and if we want to play around with it just a little bit more, let's actually get up and zoom in a little bit here. We can, again, make it interactive and kind of play around with what is the best position on the top of the roof to see this entire route. So again, just a really quick overview of the line of sight tools. And let's dive into the next part of the demo, which will be the viewshed tool. So here we are in the eastern part of campus, and we'll switch to the viewshed tool under the interactive analysis dropdown. And I want to click on the top of this building over here and add an observer point to create my first viewshed. I click and it's been added, and similar to the line of sight tool, we can activate it and then swivel the observer direction around, and then we can even change the width of the viewshed, maybe the angle, all of that. So it's completely editable. You can play around with it, create different scenarios and that sort of thing. So the green that you see here represents what can be seen from this point, from the observer point. And the red is what's in the viewshed wireframe or the viewshed parameters, however, cannot be seen from that specific point. And you can see how that'll change, the green and the red change as you move over it. So it's very interactive. So let's add in another viewshed and continue on the opposite side of the opposite side of the building. So we'll add the same viewshed to the other corner, and similar, we'll activate it and then bring it around. And I'm curious to see how they'll interact with each other. So notice that as the coverage overlaps, it turns blue. So we can zoom in a little bit. So basically, not only can you add multiple viewsheds in, but you can actually see how they interact with each other and how the coverage becomes more comprehensive depending on the angle or the number of viewsheds you might have. So again, just a really quick overview of the viewshed, and I'll clear out of this and we'll get to the last section, which is viewshed work to support security camera placement. So we're going to be focusing again on this building, which is one of the main buildings on Esri's campus. There's a lot of traffic, foot traffic that comes in and out, people working. There's also some public events that happen here. This is an area that we really want to have 24/7 security camera footage. So I have a couple of cameras. I know the specifications of the cameras, and I want to kind of place them in the best possible way based on those specifications. So I've actually added in a couple of templates to represent those camera specs. The first is with, it's called Affixed Camera A, and it has a 500-foot view distance and a horizontal field of view of 120 degrees. When I click on that, all of those parameters will pop up over here on the side. I also have a pole camera, which has a really nice degree viewshed angle, but it only has a 300-foot effective range. So it's going to look a little different. However, it does have a 35-foot offset, so it's tricked into, or it's designed really, to go on top of a 35-foot pole. So then when I click and add it, it automatically goes 35 feet up off the ground. So let's play around with some design. So I'm going to first select the affixed camera, and this is designed again to go on a wall, so it needs to be attached to something. So we'll attach it here to the outside of the building, and then we'll activate it and swivel it around so the camera is actually facing us, and we can maybe that's like a very large view distance. It's actually a little extreme for what we need it for. However, notice that it's good for looking out far. However, the angle looking down doesn't really support what we're looking for, which is ultimately coverage for this door, understanding who's walking in, who's walking out. So this might not be the best or optimal camera for us to be using in this case. So we'll clear out of that and give the pole camera a try. So this is the one that's meant to go on top of 35-foot pole. So here, again, just gonna click inside, and you notice that it's a lot smaller already. The view distance is only 300 feet, but the angle is much wider. So if we just turn the camera around, we can see that already there's a much greater, much greater, more comprehensive coverage of the area of interest here. So you can see the whole area is covered. You can see how it automatically goes up 35 feet. And this is probably the camera we're going to want to use and place out in front of this door. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Carl.
We talked about a lot of things today. If you remember when I started off, I kind of defined what we were talking about when we referenced key facilities, critical infrastructure. Our examples today included stadiums, airports, and even a business park, our own Esri campus. And then we applied a bunch of different creative workflows and apply that specifically to the facility security requirements that these types of venues and buildings might have. We're going to close out now. I just want to share with you a couple upcoming events. Our National Security and Public Safety Summit is in San Diego in just a couple of weeks, July 7th, and we'd love to see you there. Our next National Security webinar will be in September, and we will send out information on that as it becomes available. And we are going to conclude our webinar for today, and I appreciate everybody's time.